Hello viewers! A steering wheel that shakes and wobbles when you press the brake is not only annoying, but it's also a definite sign something's wrong with your brakes or front suspension. And driving around like that is not only unpleasant, but can also be dangerous, as you may have trouble controlling your car. Now I'm sure that's something you'll want to avoid, so in this video we'll find out what may be causing the steering wheel to shake when braking, and more importantly, how to fix this. Before going to possible causes, let me briefly explain the anatomy of the front suspension. This should help you identify all involved components while pinning down the problem. The wheel on your car is bolted down to a hub behind it, which also carries the brake rotor. This assembly is held in place with a set of control arms at the bottom and a shock absorber strut at the top. A configuration like this allows the wheel to go up and down when driving over bumps. This motion is controlled by the shock absorber and spring coil, which make the suspension flexible but not jumpy. Lastly, as the front wheels must turn to steer the car, its hub is connected to the steering mechanism with a tie rod. Obviously, for the car to drive smoothly and in a straight line, all of the said components must work in perfect harmony. Otherwise, you may have all sorts of drivability issues, with a steering wheel that shakes violently while braking being one of them. So let's see which of them are most likely to cause this, and to get a better view of things, we'll remove this front wheel. First and foremost is the brake rotor, which in essence is a metal disc that spins together with the wheel. And when you're braking, the brake pads inside this caliper press against the rotor, eventually stopping it and the vehicle. But this also generates a lot of heat, which, if excessive enough, may warp the rotor and bend it out of shape. With its surface not being smooth anymore, the brake pads will not press evenly against it, and this will cause strong vibrations when you press the brake, which will be transferred to your steering wheel. Brake pads are made from a unique material that creates a lot of friction when pressed against the spinning rotor, making it so effective at stopping it. But as a consequence, the pads slowly and gradually become thinner every time you brake. And if this wear is uneven for any reason, they will not grip firmly against the rotor, which again may cause vibrations that you'll feel at the steering wheel. A brake caliper has hydraulic pistons and sliding guide pins inside its housing. And sometimes, especially if the brakes aren't looked after, dirt and moisture may create a layer of rust on these parts, obstructing their movement. As a result, the affected brake caliper will not do its job, or it will keep on pressing the brake pads against the rotors even when you're not braking, causing them to overheat and warp. While all this is more likely to cause the car to pull to a side, sticky calipers may also sometimes create vibrations while braking. This usually happens when only one side of the brake pads is pressed against the rotor and the other isn't. If the wheel hub and the bearing inside it are worn and have too much play, the wheel it holds in place will wobble as it rotates. And this will likely be most noticeable when braking, as the resulting additional forces on the wheel increase and speed up this wobble. Any of the suspension components may become loose for many reasons. For instance, the control arms have bushings at each end, which can deteriorate and break apart, allowing them to move in all directions uncontrollably. Similarly, things like tie rods and ball joints may wear out, causing excessive play. Lastly, if the shock absorber is worn out, it won't hold the wheel and tire firmly against the road. And when you press the brake, the whole wheel may jump up and down. For your car to drive straight, all of its wheels must be perfectly aligned and pointing in the same direction. Otherwise, it could pull to a side, or the tires may wear out unevenly and more quickly. In addition, if the front wheels are pointing inwards or outwards too much, the car may veer from one side to another, making the steering wheel do the same. While the wheels may appear to be perfectly round, they actually aren't, and as such they would vibrate and shake when rotating, which is especially noticeable at higher speeds. This is prevented by wheel balancing, which is done by putting weights at suitable spots on the wheel's inner side. But if this hasn't been done correctly, or the wheel has been damaged in the meantime, it will be out of balance, which will cause corresponding vibrations. Things like unbalanced or misaligned wheels or worn suspension components are likely to cause issues all the time while driving, not just when braking. But however, they could be far more noticeable when you slam on the brakes, and there are two reasons for this. First is the inertia. When braking, most of the car's weight is transferred to the front axle, putting extra load on it. So if for instance the tire is worn out unevenly, it may start shaking more violently. Then the wheels, which are braking, are putting additional strain on things like control arms and ball joints. And if anything here is loose and has excessive play, the wheel will not be held firmly and may shake while braking. As you can see, a lot of things can cause your steering wheel to shake when braking, but in most cases you can quickly and easily narrow down the problem by closely paying attention to the symptoms. Let's start with the rotors, which are by far the most common cause here. If they are warped, the steering wheel will shake strongly, but only while braking. And it'll feel more or less the same every time you press the brake. Otherwise, the car will drive perfectly straight and without any vibrations. In addition, unevenly worn brake pads may have a similar effect. Seized or sticking caliper is more likely to cause the car to pull to a side when pressing the brake or after releasing it. Still, they can be completely ruled out as ones causing steering wheel vibrations. Then we have the suspension components mentioned earlier, starting with the control arms. They have bushings at each end which absorb bumps from the road, and with time the rubber they are made from may deteriorate and fall apart, making the control arm looser than it should be. The similar happens with ball joints and tie rods as their internal metal parts wear out. With any of this, your car's steering will feel disconnected and less precise, and you could also hear knocking sounds when turning or going over bumps. All of this may be far more noticeable while braking, with the steering wheel seemingly shaking and wobbling. To check where the excessive suspension play may be coming from, you'll have to lift the front end of your car. First, with the wheel still on, try to wiggle it like so, with your arms at the top and the bottom of the wheel. Then, rotate the wheel 90 degrees and wiggle it once more. If you notice any movement, the bearing inside the wheel hub may be worn. Next, take the wheel off so you can have a better view of the components behind it. Take a crowbar, place it between the control arm and chassis and push it moderately to see if the bushings are flexing too much. Lastly, do the same with the tie rods and ball joints, which, if worn out, will produce a knocking sound. As warped rotors are those usually causing the steering wheel to shake while braking, let's first see how expensive to replace them might be. Depending on the car, a pair of good rotors may cost anywhere between $100 and $300, and when doing this you'll have to put in a set of new brake pads, which is an additional $50 or $100. Brake replacement is a fairly simple job which you can do by yourself. All you need is a jack, a pair of jack stands and suitable sockets or wrenches, and by doing so you can save some money. So there you have it. As said, a shaking steering wheel is not something to be ignored. And hopefully after watching this video you'll be able to pinpoint what's causing it and more importantly fix the issue. If so, give us a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. But if none of this hasn't helped, you can continue troubleshooting by checking out other videos here, or alternatively you can visit our site mechanicbase.com for more detailed automotive repair guides. Bye!